Leif Erikson, Leiv Eiriksson, or Leif Erikson, also known as Leif the Lucky, was a Norse explorer who is thought to have been the first European to have set foot on continental North America, approximately half a millennium before Christopher Columbus. According to the sagas of Icelanders, he established a Norse settlement at Vinland, which is usually interpreted as being coastal North America. There is ongoing speculation that the settlement made by Leif and his crew corresponds to the remains of a Norse settlement found in Newfoundland, Canada, called Lance Auxiliary Meadows, which was occupied 1,000 years ago. Leif was the son of Eric the Red, the founder of the first Norse settlement in Greenland, and Thjodhild of Iceland. His place of birth is not known, but he is assumed to have been born in Iceland, which had recently been colonized by Norsemen mainly from Norway. He grew up in the family estate Brattle in the eastern settlement in Greenland. Leif had two known sons, Thorgils, born to noblewoman Thorgunna in the Hebrides, and Thorkel, who succeeded him as chieftain of the Greenland settlement. Early life. Leif was the son of Eric the Red and his wife Thjodhild, and the grandson of Thorvaltus Valdsson, and distant relative of Narrated, who discovered Iceland. His year of birth is most often given as c. 970 or c. 980. Though Leif's birthplace is not accounted for in the sagas, it is likely he was born in Iceland, where his parents met probably somewhere on the edge of Breiðafjörður, and possibly at the farm Hawkadal where Thjodhild's family is said to have been based. Leif had two brothers, whose names were Thorstein and Thorvald, and a sister, Freydis. Thorvaltus Valdsson was banished from Norway for manslaughter and went into exile in Iceland accompanied by young Eric. When Eric was banished from Iceland, he travelled further west to an area he named Greenland, where he established the first permanent settlement in 986. Tyrker, one of Eric's thralls, had been specially trusted to keep in charge of Eric's children, as Leif later referred to him as his foster father. Discovering Vinland. The saga of Eric the Red and the saga of the Greenlanders, both thought to have been written around 1200, contain different accounts of the voyages to Vinland. The only two known strictly historical mentions of Vinland are found in the work of Adam of Bremen c. 1075 and in the Book of Icelanders compiled c. 1122 by Ari the Wise. Account in the I Saga of Eric the Red/I. None. Account in the I Saga of the Greenlanders/I. None. Archaeological evidence of Vinland. Research done in the early 1960s by Norwegian explorer Helge Ingstad and his wife, archaeologist Anne Steen Ingstad, identified a Norse site located at the northern tip of Newfoundland. It has been suggested that this site, known as Lance Auxiliary Meadows, is Leifsbjudur. The Ingstads demonstrated that Norsemen had reached America about 500 years before Christopher Columbus. Later archaeological evidence suggests that Vinland may have been the areas around the Gulf of St. Lawrence and that the Lance Auxiliary Meadows site was a ship repair station and waypoint for voyages there. That does not necessarily contradict the identification of Lance Auxiliary Meadows as Leifsbjudur, since the two sagas appear to describe Vinland as a wider region which included several settlements. The saga of Eric the Red mentions two other settlements in Vinland, one called Stromfjörður, which lay beyond Kjalarnes promontory and the Wonderstrands, and one called Hop, which was located even farther south. Personal life. Leif was described as a wise, considerate, and strong man of striking appearance. During his stay in the Hebrides, he fell in love with a noblewoman, Thorgunna, who gave birth to their son Thorgils. Thorgils was later sent to Leif in Greenland, but he did not become popular. Leif was converted to Christianity while at the court of Olaf Tryggvason, King of Norway. According to both the saga of Eric the Red, and Olaf Tryggvason's saga as found in Heimskringla, after Leif's conversion, the king then commissioned him to return to Greenland to convert the settlers there. During the journey, he was blown off course and discovered Vinland before finding his way to Greenland. Leif's father Erik reacted coldly to the suggestion that he should abandon his religion, while his mother Thjildr became a Christian and built a church called Thjild's Church. A different version of Olaf Tryggvason's saga, found in Flateyjarbók, makes no reference to Leif being blown off course and discovering Vinland during his return from Norway, but indicates that after arriving in Greenland, all of that country was converted, including Leif's father Erik. The work of Leif and the priest that accompanied him to Greenland would make them the first Christian missionaries to the Americas, preceding the voyages of Christopher Columbus. Leif is last mentioned alive in 1019, and by 1025 he had passed on his chieftaincy of Eriksfjord to another son, Thorkel. Nothing is mentioned about his death in the sagas. He probably died in Greenland sometime between these dates. Nothing further is known about his family beyond the succession of Thorkel as chieftain. Legacy: Norse and medieval Europe. Leif's successful expedition in Vinland encouraged other Norsemen to also make the journey, and the Norse became the first Europeans to colonize the area. In the end there were no permanent Norse settlements, although sporadic voyages at least to Markland for forages, timber and trade possibly lasted for centuries. The casual tone of references to these areas may suggest that their discovery was not seen as particularly significant by contemporaries, or that it was assumed to be public knowledge, or both. Knowledge of the Vinland journeys spread around medieval Europe, although to what extent is unclear. Writers made mention of remote lands to the west, and notably the medieval chronicler Adam of Bremen directly mentions Vinland based upon reports from the Danes. It has been suggested that the knowledge of Vinland might have been maintained in European seaports in the 15th century, and that Christopher Columbus, who claimed in a letter to have visited Iceland in 1477, could have heard stories of it. Norse encounters with the indigenous peoples. While Leif had no contact with the indigenous peoples of Vinland, later Norse explorers did, referring to them as Skrialingi, an archaic term for wretches. According to the saga of Eric the Red, the first encounter was made during a colonizing expedition led by Thorfinn Karlsefni, which also included Leif's brother Thorvald. At first this group traded with the natives, but weeks later the new Norse settlement was attacked and Karlsefni decided to abandon it. The fleeing Norse continued to explore the general area, and one morning they encountered a one-legged native, who shot an arrow that killed Thorvald. He is famously known for pulling the arrow out, and poetically reciting the phrase, "This is a rich country we have found, there is plenty of fat around my entrails," upon which he dies. On their return to Greenland, Karlsefni's crew capture two native boys, taking them to Greenland. According to the saga of the Greenlanders, Leif's brother Thorvald made first contact with the natives. The encounter happened while Thorvald and his crew were exploring the coast, likely in the Markland area, and found 9 natives asleep under boats. They attacked the natives, killing 8 of them, while 1 escaped. In a later fight, Thorvald was killed by a native's arrow. Later, Thorfinn Karlsefni led a group to colonize Vinland and encountered natives, who they initially traded with, but relations soured when a native was killed attempting to steal weapons from the Norse. In retaliation, the natives attacked and Karlsefni decided to abandon the colony. Travels in commemoration. Stories of Leif's journey to North America had a profound effect on the identity and self-perception of later Nordic Americans and Nordic immigrants to the United States. The first statue of Erikson was erected in Boston in 1887 at the instigation of Eben Norton Horsford, who was among those who believed that Vinland could have been located on the Charles River or Cape Cod. Not long after, another casting of Whitney's statue was erected in Milwaukee. A statue was also erected in Chicago in 1901, having been originally commissioned for the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition to coincide with the arrival of the reconstructed Viking ship from Bergen, Norway. Another work of art made for the 1893 World's Columbian Exposition, the painting Leiv Eiriksson Discovering America by Christian Krogh, was in the possession of a Leif Erikson Memorial Association in Chicago before being given back to the National Gallery of Norway in 1900. For the centenary of the first official immigration of Norwegians to America, President Calvin Coolidge stated at the 1925 Minnesota State Fair, to a crowd of 100,000 people, that Leif had indeed been the first European to discover America. Additional statues of him were erected at the Minnesota State Capitol in St. Paul in 1949, near Lake Superior in Duluth, Minnesota, in 1956, and in downtown Seattle. In 1924, a party of 4 consisting of a Swede, an Englishman, and 2 Americans attempted to emulate Leif's voyage in an eponymous 40-foot vessel but were lost after reaching the west coast of Greenland. 267. In 1930, a statue of Leif was erected in the city centre of Reykjavik, Iceland, currently situated in front of Hallgrímskirkja, as a gift from the United States to Iceland to commemorate the 1000-year anniversary of Alþingi, the Parliament of Iceland. The Leif Erikson Awards, established 2015, are awarded annually by the Exploration Museum in Húsavík, Iceland. They are awarded for achievements in exploration and in the study of the history of exploration. Several ships are named after Leif: a Viking ship replica, a commercial passenger/vehicle ferry, and a large dredger. Leif Erikson Day. Gallery of Art and Sculptures. In fiction, Leif is the main character in the 1928 film The Viking. In children's literature, Leif the Lucky, written and illustrated by Ingrid and Edgar Perrin de Allaire. Published by Doubleday and Company, Inc., 1941. Leif is one of the main characters in Makoto Yukimura's manga Vinland Saga. Leif is the main character in the juvenile historical novel Vinland the Good. The author is Henry Treece, and it is illustrated by William Stobbs. It is an account of Viking-era explorations, based mainly on the Greenland Saga. An Old Captivity is a novel which involves a dream sequence featuring a character called Leif Erikson. Notably, it also features an attempt to uncover historical Viking settlements using air surveys. It was written by Neville Shute and published in 1940. Leif is a main character in the 2022 Netflix historical drama series Vikings, Valhalla, played by Sam Corlett. See also: Alonso Sanchez, a Spanish navigator who purportedly visited the Americas before Columbus. Jean Cousin, a French navigator with a similar claim. Brendan St. Brendan and his legendary voyage. Leif Erikson Awards. Leif Erikson Millennium Commemorative Coins. Kunyawangwo Kwantu, 1602 Chinese world map purportedly transcribed with Chinese data from 1430.